Welcome, and today we're going to look at some caves in China and also some free energy devices of the past, and one in particular that actually generates heat in present times. So here in China, I wanted to dig a little deeper into the last cave structure that I featured at the end of my last video. And really fascinating, these cave systems found all over the place. Some of my favorites being in China and in Turkey. And we'll look at both of those today. It's said that more than 30 million Chinese people live in caves to this day. It's cool in the summer and warm in the winter. It's quite safe, says Ren. He was born in a cave and lived there until he got a job in the city and moved in a concrete block house. He says that when he gets old, he plans on retiring back into a cave. He says he'd like to get back to his roots. Cave topology is one of the earliest human architectural forms. There are caves in France, Spain, and people still living in caves in India. A cave can be purchased for $46,000 or rented for $30 a month, although they said that most of these caves are passed down from family to family. And here's a woman, 76 years old, lives in a one-room cave, and says life is easy and comfortable here. I have everything I need. I've lived in caves all my life, and I can't imagine anything different. So really fascinating. And the article said that most people had dug these caves out themselves. And, I just really don't think so. When I have a look at these, they seem to be a little bit more complex than just dug by hand. And many of these are connected and have intricate tunnel systems and just seem to appear as much more than dug by hand primitive dwellings. What it really seems is that these may have been beautiful structures at one point, and now what we're seeing is just simply the remains, weathering from water or fire or both. And just a look at the sculptures and the carvings that we see depict something that was clearly much greater at one point. It's unclear how old this may really be. And it just really got me thinking about mountains in general. And so many mountains are full of cave systems. And could these mountains actually be dwellings? Could some of these actually have been engineered this way, as opposed to just mountains that people carved into? Could this have been the purpose all along? And could all mountains actually be manufactured? What a perfect dwelling. It's unclear and inconceivable to us, but perhaps possible. And the mainstream narrative tells us that some of these cave dwellings go back thousands of years. And really amazing. It's one thing to make a small room, but to carve intricate tunnels is another story altogether. Now, it does remind me of things that we would see in Petra, in Jordan, And again, if people had the technology to not only burrow into mountains, but carve beautiful and intricate facades that would outlast any modern building. And here we can see something similar in Turkey. And this is called Cappadocia. And again, very similar to where a people had the ability to burrow into mountains and carve as they pleased. And I say carved because I don't know what else to say. But that's not necessarily the case. These could actually be built, as I have said. This could very well be the remains of a building. Perhaps at one point these were all pyramid-shaped, and now they're completely weathered and in ruins and seeming natural. But perhaps not. Perhaps this was a monstrous tower at one point. And given enough time, metal may return to a stone look. After all, they are minerals. I don't know, but I'm absolutely fascinated and would love to explore this region of Turkey, as it seems to lend itself to this idea of mountains being manufactured, being the ultimate shelter. And what's really fascinating about these cave systems is that they go down underground, and here's a little depiction of what's going on down there. So, is this even possible to dig out, especially as old as the mainstream tells us these structures are? So what was this? Was this designed ahead of time and covered afterwards? And this reminds me of the Native American story of the Hopis, where they were brought underground to avoid a great cataclysm. And after this, they were brought up through the ground to the place in Arizona that they remain to this day. And if you're going to invest so much time into an underground city like this, you better have some means of plumbing and lighting, or this is just going to become a big mess really quickly. And I'm not sure if we see signs of that. I'm sure that that will unfold, but really interesting to consider. Finally, I wanted to touch on this temple in India. And many of you have probably seen pictures of this temple. Really amazing and resembling more of a power plant than a temple. Any one of these buildings would be perfectly adequate for worship. But what we see here are 4 giant towers, water cooling ponds all throughout, and most interestingly is what they call the lingam. And all of this is centered around this lingam, as we can see here in this little depiction. And really, a bunch of decorations around this object and adorned with gold. And yet, what is underneath it is actually just a column. Just a single pillar which is said to go underground several stories. And of course there's no public access. Everything is locked. And what is most fascinating about this lingam is that it generates a tremendous amount of heat. And they have to drip water on it just to dissipate this heat. And apparently as long as this structure has existed, it has performed this function. And no real explanations are given in the mainstream. Yet I think if something is generating heat, we can assume that it is or has some sort of power source. And let's have another little look at this lingam. And here it is, again draped with all kinds of ornamentation, and really just being some sort of pillar that is said to go underground. And these temples are just beyond comprehension, not seeming like places of worship, but actual facilities. And as we see with these people of the past, is even if something has a mechanical application, the details are never spared. And here what we have is 13 levels and 13 spires on the top of each level. And here a little look at the cooling ponds, and a look at a pillar here, and just truly a mysterious place. And so I wasn't able to find that much information on the alternative history associated with this complex, and I did see a YouTube video on phenomenal travel videos, and it was very interesting. He was really relating this to a Tesla tower. His theory is that the whole complex looks very similar to a modern-day power company. There are 4 large towers perfectly aligned to the 4 directional points. There are smaller towers inside, water sources which act like a cooling system, emergency exits, just like modern facilities, and many other similarities. Now in this little segment I wanted to thank Global Vision, and do check out his link below. Back in the USSR in the 1980s, one guy decided to attach 2 mercury thermometers to a simple TV antenna because he read some articles stating that mercury can greatly increase the sensitivity of any antenna. He somehow connected liquid metal and solid metal, and after connecting he was amazed. His TV could now catch even American TV. But it was just the beginning of the story. But at this point all the experiments were stopped. Some military people came in and arrested him. They had devices to locate such antennas. But even today some people are sure that mercury has some mystic features. What is the role of mercury metal? This is a video from YouTube. He also read some articles describing very old devices like this one. And he simply modified a regular TV antenna, again something that we would call a rabbit ear antenna. And here is affixing the mercury tube, soldering it. And you know, we do have an understanding for the special properties of mercury, and we use them in thermometers. And here now he's showing that in the middle of this field he's able to get many stations that otherwise they were not able to pick up anything in this very remote part of Russia. So very interesting, and something that I think to some extent we can probably experiment with. Now we do understand the use of modern day mercury in all kinds of light, fluorescence, mercury vapor lamps, and the illuminating of these elements. And also showing here that with a simple Tesla type coil we can illuminate from a distance, no wires needed. And here Global Vision is showing just amazing examples of this Antiquitech. Gatherers of static electricity, and perhaps also transmitters in some applications. Not yet known, but clearly understanding the similarities with modern day antenna. And all throughout these ancient buildings, we see these rods, again like a rabbit ear antenna, as if the whole thing is constructed with this in mind at a fundamental level. And just an excellent showcase of examples of this. And also mentioning that the churches were made of a crystallite granite, which is also very conductive, as will be shown here. And so when applying a charge through this small chunk of granite, now when she touches it, it creates a ground and allows the current to flow through the rock. And we can see that in the tester on the right side. For today, I do hope you enjoyed the video, and have a blessed day. Please like, comment, and subscribe.